Let me tell you something real, something raw, something no one has the guts to say out loud. The desperate need for approval is the disease of the weak. The obsession you have with people liking you, clapping for you, validating you, it's the very thing that's killing your potential. You wake up every day not to chase greatness, but to chase applause. You scroll, you post, you wait for likes, comments, hearts. You live for the nods of strangers who wouldn't even piss on you if you were on fire. You're out here adjusting your tone, your outfit, your opinions, not based on truth, but based on how it will be received. That's not strategy, that's slavery. The weak man makes every decision with one question in mind: will they approve? And that question is the iron chain wrapped around his neck. That question is why he never risks, never speaks his truth, never stands tall. That question is why he stays broke, broken, and average. Because approval is the enemy of power. Strong men, they don't need a round of applause. They don't care if the room goes silent when they walk in. They operate from truth, from conviction, from results. They say what needs to be said. They do what needs to be done. If the world applauds, fine. If it doesn't, even better. Because the strong man thrives in rejection. He gets sharper, colder, more dangerous. A man who seeks approval is a man who has already lost. The moment your decisions, your actions, and your identity depend on the opinions of others, you've handed over the keys to your life. You're no longer driving the car, you're in the backseat, hoping the crowd takes you somewhere good. But the crowd doesn't care about you. It only wants entertainment. It wants compliance. It wants another face in the sea of sameness. And when you make approval your goal, that's exactly what you become: average, replaceable, forgettable. A weak man obsesses over being liked. He's terrified of offending anyone, terrified of being misunderstood, terrified of rejection. So he softens his tone, he hides his ambition, he dumbs down his dreams, all to blend in. He thinks that by staying agreeable and humble, he'll be accepted. But the truth is, people might smile at him, they might pat him on the back, but deep down, they don't respect him, because even they can sense his desperation. They know he has no spine, no fire, no edge. You see, the world doesn't reward neediness. It doesn't reward the man who bends to fit the mold. It rewards the man who smashes it. But the man seeking approval can never smash anything. He's too worried about stepping on toes. He's too busy wondering what others will think. He doesn't act from strength. He reacts from fear. Every move he makes is filtered through one question: will they approve? That one question becomes his prison. It chains him to mediocrity. It keeps him in the shadow of stronger, bolder men who simply don't care what others think. What makes approval seeking so toxic is that it's invisible. It hides behind good intentions. You'll hear it dressed up as being polite or getting along or maintaining peace. But in reality, it's weakness. It's fear wearing a mask. And once it becomes a habit, it infects every part of your life. You'll start shrinking your dreams because they sound too bold. You'll avoid speaking the truth because it might offend. You'll stay in bad jobs, bad relationships, and bad routines because they make you feel safe. All because, deep down, you're afraid of disapproval, afraid of standing alone. But no great man ever cared about fitting in. The men who build empires, the men who change the game, they don't wait for claps. They don't need likes. They act from conviction, not consensus. They walk into rooms and say what needs to be said. They lead not because it's popular, but because it's right. And ironically, they're the ones who gain real respect, not because they chased it, but because they refused to chase approval in the first place. You'll never rise above average if your self-worth is tied to how others react to you. Approval is a drug. The more you get, the more you crave. And like any addiction, it makes you weaker over time. You start living for the next fix, another compliment, another like, another well done. And when it doesn't come, you feel lost, empty. You question yourself. That's not power, that's dependence. That's weakness at its core. A real man understands that disapproval is not death. Criticism doesn't break him, it sharpens him. He knows that being misunderstood is part of the journey. He knows that rejection is the tax you pay for being different. And he embraces it, he thrives in it. Because he knows that once you stop caring who approves of you, you become dangerous, free, unstoppable. If you want to build something real, something powerful, you need to kill the approval-seeking instinct. You need to be willing to walk alone, to be mocked, to be hated, to be doubted. That's the price of greatness. That's the path of strength. And only when you stop living for others can you truly live for yourself. Forget applause, forget validation, make decisions based on purpose, act based on truth, speak with fire, not fear, because the moment you need no one's approval, that's the moment the world starts to take you seriously. True power doesn't come from being celebrated by the crowd. It doesn't come from standing under spotlights or hearing people chant your name. That kind of recognition is temporary, fleeting, hollow. Real power, unshakable, grounded, lasting. Power comes from self-respect. It comes from knowing who you are, living by your own code, and refusing to betray yourself for attention or acceptance. The man who respects himself doesn't need applause because he already carries validation within his actions. The weak man craves praise because he's empty inside. He needs the world to tell him he's enough. He needs constant reminders that he matters. So he performs, he conforms, he sacrifices his values just to win a smile or a compliment. But the problem with that, applause never lasts. One moment they cheer, the next they boo. And if your sense of worth rises and falls with that noise, you'll always be a puppet, controlled by opinions, trends, and other people's expectations. Self-respect, on the other hand, is untouchable. It's built in silence, in discipline, in private victories when no one is watching. It's the result of doing what's right, even when it's hard, saying what's true, even when it's unpopular, showing up when no one claps for you. That's where power grows, when you stop negotiating your soul for approval and start doing what's necessary because it aligns with who you are. A man with self-respect doesn't need to prove anything. He's not desperate to be seen or acknowledged. He moves with certainty, not because he thinks he's better than others, but because he knows he's done the work. His confidence is earned, not borrowed from praise. He can look in the mirror and know he's not lying to himself. That quiet peace, that solid foundation, that's real power. Applause is external. It depends on timing, context, and public mood. It can be given and taken away. But self-respect, that's internal. No one can give it to you, no one can take it away. You earn it through consistency, through sacrifice, through showing up every single day and doing what needs to be done, whether the world is watching or not. This is why the strongest men in history were hated before they were celebrated. They didn't follow the crowd, they led it. And leadership requires the kind of backbone that approval seekers don't have. You can't change anything if you're scared of upsetting people. You can't become powerful if your identity depends on being liked. The truth is, if everyone agrees with you, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. The man who respects himself doesn't fear disagreement, he expects it. He knows that standing alone is part of the process. And here's the brutal truth. Most people praising you don't even mean it. They clap because they're supposed to, they compliment you because it's polite, but the second you stop fitting their image of what's acceptable, they turn on you. That's why relying on applause is so dangerous. It conditions you to seek permission instead of taking charge. It teaches you to play safe instead of playing bold. You don't build legacy through applause. You build it through integrity, through grit, through refusing to fold when life gets hard. The world doesn't need more performers. It needs men of principle, men who don't flinch, men who would rather be respected by themselves than loved by 1,000 strangers. So if you want real power, stop chasing approval, stop bending your truth to please the room, stop letting the noise of claps distract you from your mission. Focus on being the man who keeps his word, the man who stays disciplined, the man who doesn't need recognition to do what's right. That's the man who can't be broken. That's the man who becomes unstoppable. When you build self-respect, you don't need anyone to validate your path. You walk it with your head high, even when it's lonely, because deep down you know true power was never in their hands, it was always in yours. You might think you're free, scrolling your phone, posting your life, fishing for likes, and soaking in the attention, but you're not. You're shackled, you're a slave, and your master is digital validation. Every like, every comment, every notification is a chain wrapped tighter around your neck. The worst part? You volunteered for it. No one forced you. You handed over your self-worth to a screen, to strangers, to the algorithm. And now your mood, your confidence, your identity rises and falls with each swipe. Modern slavery doesn't look like whips and chains anymore. It looks like dopamine hits, filters, and curated perfection. It looks like a man who can't sleep at night because his post didn't perform. A man who changes his opinions, style, and behavior just to get more engagement. A man who says what's trendy instead of what's true. That's not freedom. That's not power. That's submission. You're not building a life. You're performing for an audience that doesn't care. Living for likes is the ultimate betrayal of self. It means your worth is no longer measured by your actions, your discipline, your vision, but by the applause of people who wouldn't even recognize you in real life. You become a hollow version of yourself, shaped not by principles, but by popularity. You do what's safe, what's approved, what gets clicks. You lose your edge, you lose your identity. You become just another echo in a sea of noise. Validation addiction turns men into cowards. They fear rejection, controversy, silence. They won't speak their mind, won't take risks, won't stand for anything that might cost them attention. They're terrified of being ignored, so they cling to trends, mimic influencers, and post whatever keeps them relevant. But relevance bought with obedience is worthless, because once the crowd moves on, and it always does, you're left with nothing. No respect, no legacy, no sense of self. The truth is, the man who chases likes is never satisfied. He gets 100 today, wants 1,000 tomorrow. He builds his identity on approval, but approval is unstable. It's conditional. One mistake, one unpopular opinion, and it all disappears. He lives on edge, constantly adjusting to stay liked. That's not confidence. That's captivity. He's trapped in a cycle where validation is currency and his soul is the price. And it's everywhere. You see it in the gym, guys training more for selfies than strength. You see it in relationships, people pretending to be happy just for the highlight reel. You see it in business, entrepreneurs selling out their vision to stay relatable. Everyone's afraid of being forgotten, so they post constantly, desperately, hoping someone notices. But attention is not the same as impact, and likes are not the same as respect. Ask yourself, who are you without the likes, without the followers, without the digital applause? Can you still stand tall? Can you still respect the man in the mirror when no one else is looking? That's the real test. Because if you need the world to tell you that you matter, then you don't. Not really, not deep down. Power isn't built on approval, it's built on independence. Break the chains. Start doing things that matter even if no one claps. Speak the truth even if no one agrees. Work in silence, build in the dark. Be someone of value, not someone who just looks valuable online. The strongest men in the world aren't posting for praise. They're too busy conquering, too focused on purpose, too grounded in reality to care about fake attention. Social media isn't evil, but your relationship with it can be. Use it as a tool, not as a lifeline. Share your wins, your progress, but don't let it become your identity. Don't let a few red hearts determine your self-worth. Don't become a prisoner to opinions, comments, and trends. You're better than that. You're built for more than just attention. The world will try to distract you with lights, numbers, and noise, but real fulfillment, real power comes from within. From doing the work when no one watches, from standing firm when everyone disagrees, from walking your path regardless of who's cheering. When you stop living for likes and start living for legacy, that's when you're finally free. Rejection isn't the end, it's the beginning. It's not a sign that you're failing, it's proof that you're trying. Most people run from rejection like it's a death sentence. They avoid it, fear it, let it crush their spirit. But the truth is, rejection is the most powerful teacher in your life. It exposes your weaknesses, toughens your mind, and forges the kind of strength comfort could never give you. Every no you receive, every door slammed in your face, every time someone doubts you, it's a spark. And if you harness it right, that spark turns into fire. Weak men crumble under rejection. They take it personally. One setback and they quit. One failure and they retreat into their little comfort zone, licking their wounds and making excuses. That's not growth, that's fragility. That's proof they weren't ready. But strong men, they eat rejection. They let it harden them. They see it as fuel. It makes them colder, sharper, more focused, because real strength doesn't come from being accepted. It comes from rising again after being denied. A rejection forces you to confront the truth. It shows you where you're lacking, where you need to improve, where your plan wasn't solid enough. That sting you feel, that's pressure. And pressure, when embraced, builds resilience. You learn not to flinch. You learn to keep swinging even when the punches don't land. That's the edge that separates winners from everyone else. Not talent, not luck, but the ability to keep going when everyone else would fold. Look around. Every powerful man you admire is a history of rejection. They weren't always applauded. They were laughed at, ignored, told they weren't good enough, but they kept moving forward because they weren't in it for validation, they were in it for domination. Rejection didn't break them, it built them. It carved out the kind of mental toughness you can't fake. That mindset that says, I don't care how many times I get knocked down, I will rise every single time, harder than before. There's a reason the average man avoids challenges. He's afraid of failing, afraid of hearing no, afraid of not being enough. So he never risks anything real. He settles for mediocrity because it's safe. But that safety, it's a trap. Keeps him soft, keeps him weak. Rejection is necessary because it keeps you raw. It keeps you in the fight. And every fight you survive makes you more dangerous. You don't grow when everything's going your way. You grow when your back is against a wall, when no one believes in you, when every voice around you tells you to quit. That's when you find out who you really are. Rejection clears out the noise. It reveals your true hunger. How bad do you really want it? Are you just in it for the applause, or will you keep grinding when nobody's watching, nobody's cheering, and nothing is guaranteed? Most people fear rejection because they think it says something about their worth, but rejection doesn't define you, your response to it does. You can let it beat you, or you can let it build you. It's a choice. And the men who rise above, those who become unshakable, they're the ones who chose pain over comfort, lessons over ego, and persistence over pity. You want to win in life? Then expect to be rejected over and over again. Wear it like armor. Let it toughen your skin. Let it refine your purpose. Let it sharpen your discipline, because every time you hear no, you're being guided to something better. You're being prepared. Every failure, every loss, every moment of doubt is part of the fire that forges champions. Rejection isn't something to hide from, it's something to embrace. It's your call to level up. The stronger you become, the less it affects you. Until one day you stop fearing rejection altogether. You realize it's not an obstacle, it's a weapon, and the man who masters it, he becomes unstoppable. Men who crave approval don't live, they perform. Their entire existence becomes a stage act. Carefully crafted to win applause, to avoid criticism, to stay liked. They bend, shrink, and reshape themselves constantly, terrified of rejection, addicted to validation, and in the end, no one remembers them. Not because they weren't capable of greatness, but because they chose comfort over courage. They died forgotten, not from lack of talent, but from a refusal to stand alone. Craving approval is a slow death. You lose yourself inch by inch. You silence your voice, second-guess your instincts, and bury your ambition under the fear of offending someone. You say what people want to hear, you act how they want you to act, you become agreeable, polished, safe. But greatness doesn't live in safety, it lives in boldness. And boldness demands that you risk being disliked. The man obsessed with approval will never lead, he can't. Leaders disrupt, leaders polarize, leaders challenge what's normal. But the approval seeker is too busy chasing smiles and avoiding conflict. He's soft. He folds under pressure. He needs others to constantly affirm him, to pat his back, to whisper, "You're doing great," or he loses all direction. That man is not remembered, he is replaced. History doesn't reward the man who tried to please everyone. It rewards the man who stood firm in his truth, even when the entire world opposed him. Approval seekers are like ghosts, present but never powerful. They pass through life without ever leaving a mark because they were too scared to step off the approved path. They never took the risks, never had the hard conversations, never chased the bigger dream because someone might disapprove. Approval is a leash. It keeps you dependent on others for confidence, for identity, for motivation. You'll never know what you truly want because you're too busy being what others want. That's not a life, that's a performance. A man who lives like that dies with regret. Regret for all the times he stayed silent, regret for the chances he didn't take, regret for the version of himself he never became. The truth is, people don't respect approval seekers. They may like them temporarily, but they don't admire them. You don't gain loyalty by being agreeable. You gain loyalty by standing for something, by having values that don't shift with the crowd. People may not always like the man who speaks his mind, but they remember him. They may disagree with a man who takes a stand, but they respect him because deep down, everyone recognizes courage, even if they pretend to hate it. When you stop craving approval, something incredible happens. You gain clarity. You start making decisions based on principle, not popularity. You stop chasing the crowd and start building your own path. You start attracting people who respect your authenticity instead of those who expect your obedience. And you become dangerous, not because you're violent or loud, but because you're free. Free from needing them to like you, free to do what's right, no matter the backlash. Approval seeking is also a time waster. You spend hours filtering your words, your appearance, your image just to keep up an illusion. Imagine what you could build if that energy was directed toward purpose instead. Imagine the man you could become if you stopped apologizing for who you are. Imagine the legacy you could leave if you didn't need permission to chase it. Every great man was, at some point, hated, misunderstood, criticized. That's the price of leadership, the price of being authentic, the price of refusing to bow. But guess what? They were remembered. Their names are etched in history because they had the guts to defy expectation and pursue their mission regardless of who cheered or booed. That's the kind of man you should strive to be. Don't be the man who dies quietly, having never said what he truly meant, never done what he truly wanted, never lived as he truly was. Don't be the man who chose approval over impact, because at the end of the day, the world forgets those who tried to please it, but it never forgets the few who dared to challenge it. You can't have both. That's the brutal truth no one wants to say out loud. You must choose between being liked and being respected. They are not the same, and they often don't coexist. The world conditions you to believe that being liked is the ultimate goal. To be agreeable, friendly, easygoing, never rocking the boat. But that path leads to mediocrity. It creates a man who blends in, never stands out, and never leaves a mark. Respect doesn't come from blending in, it comes from standing out, even when it makes you unpopular. Being liked means playing by the rules others set. It means filtering your words so you don't offend anyone. It means watering down your beliefs to be more palatable. It means saying yes when you want to say no, nodding along with things you don't believe in, and biting your tongue when truth demands to be spoken. It means living for harmony, not honesty. That's not strength, that's compliance. That's fear disguised as politeness. Respect, on the other hand, is earned when you stand your ground, when you say what needs to be said, not what's easiest to hear. When you choose discipline over comfort and conviction over convenience. People might not like you for it, but they'll remember you. They'll look at you differently, because deep down, everyone recognizes power, even if it makes them uncomfortable. Being respected means you have a spine, a standard, a code, and you don't break it for applause. Weak men chase approval. They try to be everyone's friend. They avoid confrontation, stay neutral, and apologize for their ambition, but they never command respect. You can't respect a man who doesn't even stand up for himself. You can't respect someone who agrees with everyone just to be liked. That's not integrity, that's insecurity. And insecurity repels true respect. You want to be liked? Be agreeable, smile more, be soft, be passive, say what people want to hear, go with the flow. But don't expect anyone to follow you. Don't expect people to take your words seriously. Don't expect to be a leader. Because the truth is, likability fades the moment you stop giving people what they want. It's conditional, fragile. One wrong move, and the same people who once liked you will turn on you. But when you're respected, your presence carries weight. You don't have to shout, you don't have to beg for attention. People listen because they know you don't waste words. They follow because they trust you to speak the truth. They watch you because you do what others are too afraid to do. Respect is earned in silence, in consistency, in standing tall when others kneel. Here's the hard part. Being respected often requires being disliked. When you hold people accountable, they'll resent you. When you pursue excellence, they'll accuse you of arrogance. When you refuse to back down, they'll call you difficult. That's the cost. But it's worth it. Because respect outlasts popularity. It builds legacy, not just moments of approval. Look at every great leader, warrior, creator. They weren't loved by all. In fact, many were hated, criticized, even betrayed. But they were respected. And that respect carried more weight than 1,000 empty compliments ever could. They didn't bend to be liked, they stood tall to be remembered. You must decide what matters more, being comfortable in the moment or being powerful in the long run. Do you want people to like your image or respect your reality? Because respect demands sacrifice, it demands boldness. It demands that you walk alone when necessary and be hated for doing what's right rather than loved for doing what's easy. The choice is yours. Keep chasing approval and you'll always be controlled, or build unshakable respect and you'll walk with a power no one can take from you. The man who is respected may not be liked by everyone, but he doesn't need to be. He doesn't chase love, he commands loyalty. And that's what separates the remembered from the forgotten.